Welcome back and moving on to our second segment for today. We have three new museums to be opened in Egypt. And whenever we talk about museums, definitely this is of great importance because if you want to learn anything or more about the history or culture of a nation, just by visiting the museum, you will learn a lot. And where else you can find the history of Egypt? Egypt, the cradle of all civilizations. Over the phone, we have Mr. Sayed Taha. He's our tourism expert. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. And before we proceed, I would like just to shed the light on the importance of museums in Egypt.
Yeah. As we know that museums always talking about the history of the civilization and the culture through the different ages and different eras. And we used to have museums since the beginning of the last century. Let's see, the National Museum of Tahrir Square was opened in 1901 and then was followed by another museum for the Islamic art and was opened in 1912. And another one was opened in 1920 for the Coptic art and so on. And we have some local museums like the one in Alexandria and another one, we call it the National Museum in Alexandria and so on. A lot of museums, if I start to count how many museums that we have all over Egypt, it's countless museums. And we need more, by the way, because we have a lot of antiquities still stored in different storage. Next to the pyramids area, for example, in Saqqara, we have 5 of them, storages full of different antiquities and different artifacts waiting to be displayed in the new museum and in the different museums that we are arranging in different places. We have museums that dedicated to different types of arts and artifacts. And we have museums dedicated to the type of materials that used in ancient time. For example, you can find the textile museum, you can find the Museum of Fine Art, and so on.
And of course, if we are talking about the Grand Egyptian Museum, which will change the concept of museums in the whole world. And talking about the 3 new museums to be opened in Egypt, I was talking first about the Capital Museum, the Greco-Roman Museum in Alexandria. Could you tell us more about these museums? Let's start by the Capital Museum.
Yeah. That new museum that being inaugurated, soft inauguration in the new capital, it's a unique museum because it's talking about the history and the progress and the development that was passed to the different capitals of Egypt since the time of Eneb Hajj, or what we call it nowadays, Memphis. That was established about 3,200 years BCE by that famous king Narmer. And then that was developed into another, capital that was established during the Middle Kingdom, nearby a place we call it nowadays Ahnasia, Bani Suef Governorate. And then that was moved to Thebes or Luxor, and so on up to the time of Ptolemies and the Greek-Roman time. Alexandria was the capital of Egypt. In this museum, the Capital Museum, or the new museum in the new capital, there are some artifacts and some statues and some, in general, antiquities, talking about the different sites or the different capitals that we have here in Egypt. And that's, I think, it's the only museum all over the world talking about the progress and the development that was passed through those different capitals of Egypt that we have through the different eras of the history, since the Pharaoh's time up to the medieval time and up to the last century. As we know, Cairo was established by the Fatimids about 1,000 years ago. Before that, we had different capitals nearby Cairo that we call it Fustat and Qata'a and so on. that we knew about the medieval time history. Regarding the Museum of the Greek-Roman art in Alexandria, this is a very known museum, and we used to have tourists as a sightseeing for this museum. But more than 15 years ago, they closed the museum for the restoration and the reconstruction the area around there. And when they've been arranging the museum, by the way, they have found a cachette, or like a place hidden under the museum, and they found there some antiquities. I think that antiquities been hidden there during the Second World War. The people they've been attending the museum, they've been worried that the antiquities will be affected by the war. That's why they kept them there in this hidden shaft, and that was rediscovered again during the reconstruction and the restoration work. This is a very nice story talking about this that was found in the garden of the Greek-Roman Museum in Alexandria. I think it will be reopened again recently, because they finished almost more than 90% of the work that's supposed to be done. Also, there is another museum waiting for the inauguration. Recently will be inaugurated, the Museum of Muhammad Ali, not the one in Manial, Muhammad Ali the Junior. No, I mean about Muhammad Ali, the founder of that monarchy here in Egypt, the great Muhammad Ali. And the museum will be in the palace, that Shubra Palace. In one of the episodes, we've been talking about this palace that will be open recently as well. There are a lot of efforts and a lot of activities going on and waiting for the inauguration that will be recently, I think within a month or a couple of months, we will be listening or knowing about the new inauguration of these new museums.
Right. When we talk about museums, usually sometimes the first thing that will come to our minds that we're talking about ancient museums or ancient pieces. But just as you mentioned, here in Egypt, it is completely different when it comes to the diversification of the place itself or what we have to display. So how far it is important also, because modern Egypt, also we have, when we need to learn more about modern Egypt, we have palaces, we have the museums, just as you mentioned, and this is again another important part, because it's the variety actually, and we always say that this is our competitive advantage, that you can never find it elsewhere.
I'm not exaggerating if I say that Egypt, the whole territory of Egypt, is a museum. I can say it like that, because everywhere you go, you will find something belong to different eras of the history, and this is a country with a very long history, since the beginning of the Stone Ages up to nowadays. In medieval time, you will find things in the new eras. Recently, they founded a museum in Abu Dhahab Palace, nearby Al-Azhar Mosque. That museum will talk about the famous novelist, the famous writer Naguib Mahfouz, our famous writer Naguib Mahfouz, who won that famous Nobel Prize in Literature in 1988. The place will be changed into a museum, and we will talk about the Mahfouz and his time and his life and what he wrote, different novels and different. So this is another museum. Will be, I think it's opened. I'm not sure quietly if it's opened or it's still waiting to be inaugurated recently. Also, we have local museum. Look at that museum in Sharm el-Sheikh. Look at that museum in Kafr el-Sheikh. Look at the museum of Malawi, even the one was affected by the revolution of 2011, and later on was reopened again. A new museum was established in Sohag as well, very nice one. And also the one in Suez and the one in Ismailia. Nowadays they are preparing for Kumushi Museum in Fayoum area. This is very interesting museum, especially the famous faces of Fayoum and the portrait of Fayoum that was discovered by Flinders Petrie, the renowned archaeologist of the beginning of the last century.
So let's put it like this: explore Egypt, and here in Egypt we have a lot of things to be explored. Every time you will visit Egypt, you will find more new things to see and more to explore. Mr. Syed Taha, our tourism expert, thank you very much for joining us. And I guess with this we'll come to the end of our breakfast show for today. Thank you all for joining us, and stay tuned for more coming up on Nile TV International.